This isn't applicable anymore because I changed your guys' settings. But your school is, and your network people are gonna have to change probably the settings on your computer, unless you're dialing this in from your office, because what I say was 10.7.164.73. And so yours is just gonna have to be, if you can change yours, it's just gonna be one number off. If you're pulling up here, then you can make the changes on your computer. You can Google that. This is where we change our UDP port settings in LMCS. Under support, under properties, down here it says UDP port number. So yours is gonna wanna say 47808. We can discover all our devices. You can see here's these segments, 8611, 8613 we saw on the other one. All of these have devices on them or rooms on them. And so we highlight the top, we hit discover, and it populates and it starts reading. When we're looking at this right here has to be green. If it's red, it's not communicating. These two things here need to be, will be grayed out if you're not communicating. We hit discover, it pulls all those segments in, and then it's gonna start pulling in each one of the bridges and start reading the room. It'll pull up the bridge, it'll read it, and then we'll start populating all of our devices over here. Everything happens programming wise through LMCS first. We get all our programming done, and then we go to the segment manager and we have to rediscover everything back in. I've done a backup already, and I've done a site copy. That'll be on a file. Under reports, you can get some of the BACnet points. Again, it's available under the LMCS. LMCS is like a software suite. So it has all this different stuff in here, all of the rooms and the switches and all this different stuff. Let's see, I'm gonna get to it here. Let me go back to support. Where was it? Under support, it has a firmware update. Also inside of this package is all of the firmware that's needed for this particular software suite, depending on what number it is. We were talking about this 4.7 earlier and the 4.8, and they're starting to get into the wireless stuff, and this mostly works and has been ramped for the wireless stuff. I still use the old version of 4.6304. Room view brings up all of the plug-in controllers. We get this opportunity to get into the room controller and have our preset values. So this is either probably an office. It says team room, which could be a conference room. That value has to be 70 if we're gonna do auto on. But we can make all these changes. If we're talking, we're gonna see this here. Right here it says the room is in normal hours. If this says sensor table is empty, so the occupancy sensor is timed out. Override countdown, there's no override. And their target levels are 0. You can see that it's out. We're gonna look at a couple things. I'm gonna just pass through this real quick because we're gonna touch on some of this stuff. The switch itself, here's where we are, where we can change it to be loads, right? We click on here and we can change this to be a scene or the network switch. Tells us if we're healthy, how many bridges, network position. I don't know what's up there. It says device count's 12, but its position is 47. I don't understand that. I don't know why it's there. Pretty much that is the end of what I got. With LMCS or IRB, and it helps alleviate some of that confusion between the two. You're nowhere near this, but each one of these runs here, we can have up to 4,000 feet and 35 to 45 rooms off of one of the segments on the segment manager. You've got a different one. I got another picture of this, but off of this, there's 2 ports. You've got 4. This one's got 3, but there's 3 ports off of the segment manager. We don't have a network switch or a router, but it's going to be the same. It's just going to come all the way in, and you've got 2 of those. One doing 17 rooms on this side. That's including the panel, and just 1 room on the other segment on the other side. The IRB is Cat 5, power over Ethernet in-room bus, 40 devices. Topology free for 1,000 feet, you're nowhere near that. But we can go and we can put in a splitter. You know, I got another picture of this. We can go off, we don't have to go linear in all these things. 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. We can actually go, this one has 4 ports in it, and we can go topology free, T-tap, no circles, no spider webs, and no opens. And that will create a healthy IRB. 40 devices, 1,000 feet, non-volatile flash memory. Every single one of these devices has its own memory inside of it. So we're gonna, with this particular, that's a bad one to pick, this particular switch, which you've got in the back over there, has different parameters and settings for this switch. Each one of these buttons can be exactly the same, or they can be different. And then there's 2 different profiles, a normal hours and an after hours profile that goes inside of there. All that lives inside of the switch. And then during the programming, we assign this button to do a particular load. So if we take this switch out of the scenario, let's say we've got 7 loads in here, and these bottom 2 do 6 and 7. If we take this to another room that doesn't have load 6 and 7, they won't do anything. Pretty much the switch has to stay within the room. The room controllers make up and produce the milliamps that's needed for the power over Ethernet for these particular switches. They're 24 volts. And then we've got our peripheral devices here that use up that power. If we look at our 40 device max here, if we have 1 room controller that's producing 250 milliamps, you can see we're not going to get 39 more devices probably on here. But that's all made up, right? When they design it to have that power ready and available. This is the pinout for Cat 5, and this is what's on there. Number one is our communication, ground, power, ground. Legacy controls, these down through here are like this is like an analog stuff. So we're still able to do a couple of analog things. We don't see them much anymore, but they made that, when they were making that jump, they made that available, that could be done. The room controller, you guys, like you said, you guys have this everywhere, so you know what they look like. Plenum rated, 0 to 10 for your dimming. Each one of these ports has a separate 0 to 10 on it. It's got 16 preset light level scenes. If we go back, all of the room controllers that are 2 series, which are the big ones like this, if we go into a plug load controller, if it's a 2 series like this, that output, that 250 milliamp output is regulated. So the Cat 5 is rated for, I think, like 750 milliamps or 800 milliamps. And so it's gonna stop producing milliamps when it gets up to 750. The 100 series, you've got a few here. They don't have a regulated milliamp output. So for one IRB, you're limited to 4 of them. I think they're 150 a piece. So, but as long as we've got 4 or less, we can then also have as many of the other room controllers on there. With LMCS and the panel for the lighting is working opposite of what you might think. The panel for the lighting, normal hours for it is at night, and after hours is during the day. If we pull this up here, this is not grayed out. If we weren't talking, this would be grayed out. Again, down here is my little green connection that I'm connected to it. And when I get to the detailed status, it's right here. This says we're in normal hours, which we shouldn't be in normal hours. We should be in after hours. We'll take a look at that. I was wondering why the lights were on. Let's see, what else do we got here? In the event we have to replace something, if we have to replace this occupancy sensor, or probably even more common, this switch, because kids can't keep their hands off of it, we can come up to the top of the room here, and over here, we've already made our replacement to the room. When we hit discover, it's gonna go out and it's gonna find everything that's in the room. And when it notices something, something is different, you can see it's counting through here. When it notices something different or something missing, wait a second. What number did I write? I'll look at it later. See, it's missing something right here, and it might have been that occupancy sensor that it just said that was that I didn't read. 7048. Yep, there it is right there. So I'll figure out why that one has stopped talking. So if we had to replace that, it would, right up here, it would say in red that it's noticed a new device. Do you want to add it? And you say yes. And then it recognizes that the serial numbers, that what it's missing or what it's adding, there's something missing. And it says, do you want to swap the serial numbers? So you say yes and you hit finalize. And then when you get into the space and you go to where that new one is, when you hit send, is this not? When you hit send, it's taking all of the old programming and putting it into the new device. So that's whether or not this is a occupancy sensor or a room controller. If we're going to start replacing room controllers with all these peripheral devices, we could do both of those things, but at the end we would have to make a new export table if we're using if we're actually using that information. To get away from that, we can come here to the room controller or any of these devices, and we can go to the advanced tab here, and right here we can change the serial number from the new one to the old one. So we discover our device, we keep track of our serial numbers, and we say we want to change our number. When we discover it, it repopulates it, you send all the information out, and then you come here and you put the old ID number in here, and you push it out, and now this new device is exactly like the old one, and you don't have to do any export tables or anything like that. Exterior lighting, all of the exterior lighting, this LMIO right here is for a photocell. There's one up on the roof. Under the panel here, we have our network groups. We've got 3 groups, one that does all 4 lights, and that is, we're running an Astro schedule. Right here where it says dark light Astro, group 1, normal hours. Dark action is.
Just for an example, what of those components do we have in this room we're sitting in right now?
This particular room here, we have, and I'm not showing it here. We've got a room controller with 2 loads in it. We have a bridge. We have 3 of these switches. We've got 1 of these switches. And then we have 2 occupancy sensors. And mine are the ones up at the top there that are flashing red and blue. As you move, this one here in the corner, blue's kind of hard to see, but that's what we have in this room, and we have
the one daylight sensor.
And the daylight sensor.
Okay. So all that, so we probably have a single 3-zone room controller in here.
So 2.
2.
Yep.
Because we have just
So we have
one
a
daylighting
yep,
zone,
1 primary, and then 2
regular zones, and 1 regulated.
Yep. $20 amps, so we've got 16 available amps here, right? Everything's already rated by the electrician. It's a 20 amp controller. If it's a 3 load, we're going to split those 20 amps between the 3. There is only 1 line in on these here. The dimming switch, low voltage switch. This particular switch, all it's going to do, it's got some parameters in here as go-to values and timeouts and all that kind of stuff. But all this is going to do is turn the lights on and off and raise and lower. If we have a button like this, the 5 button, we can isolate these. This is still a rocker, just like this one, has the same function, does the same thing. But with this here, we've got this opportunity to create a scene button, which is where yours are at. By default, yours are doing 100, 75, 50, and 25. And then we're gonna get on and off with this, raise and lower with this. Or we can make it a load button where we assign load 1, load 2, load 3, load 4, or a network button. Network button, we do have a couple of network buttons that are in some locations, the electrical room, and these out here that turn on lights that are from the lighting control panel. Occupancy sensor, passive infrared, IR, and ultrasonic. This is the the DC dual control occupancy sensor. You have a few of these, but most of yours, that's called a DX, I believe, are wall mounted. There are some codes up underneath there, particularly these 2. If we look up if we take this cover off, under here there is a LCD screen, and you can program the occupancy sensor with it, but obviously we have the config tool. We're gonna do all of it mostly from that. And so if we have a code, like I said, usually it's gonna be one of these. This is usually found out early if we don't have enough power. When we were talking about, what are milliamps and all that kind of stuff. What happens when the code is seen, what you'll see that LCD screen. These ones have an LCD screen also. And what you'll see is, as it's blinking normally like this, it's not blue. That cover for where the infrared is isn't blue. But it'll start blinking, it'll come on blue, you'll see it, and that's gonna be right up in here. That whole thing will look kind of like that, but it'll be blue. And if we get one of those codes, it's probably gonna be one of these, and that's gonna be a Cat 5 issue. Whether the comm line is being grounded or not, or it's miswired, somebody drives a screw in through something because, you know, maintenance happens and expansion happens, you may see something like that. But right now, everything is actually really good. This is the daylight sensor. This one is the 500. And it's the 500, you don't have any here, but the 500 looks right out the window, doesn't care about what's going on here. And we tell it what it sees. Normal hours, light action is after hours, and then it's Monday through Sunday and holidays. The offset is 30, that was dictated by the school. And then we have the IO for, this is the photo cell. It's just gonna go to its last non-value and turn off. And the set point is 20-foot candles. Because of this inverted schedule, when we get into the lighting, this is what it's doing in normal hours. In the normal hours, it's going to its last known value, which is gonna be on at 100. It's recorded right here. And then we go into after hours, which is during the day. It's gonna turn off with a blink warning. And that override time is 4 hours. That's weird. The override time is 4 hours. This way, when they if they use one of those override switches during the day, the lights will turn off in 4 hours. It says it's in normal hours. I'm going to, from here.
Normal hours, I think we typically think of as occupied hours.
Yep. I don't know how it got off. I'm gonna change it right now to room operation after hours, because we're after hours. You can see a reflection out there. The light is on. They just blinked, okay? Because we went into after hours. That's gonna happen in the morning or anytime the photocell turns it off. If we go back to our controller here, you can see it's on. When we get down here, it says after hours, and then right here it says 5-minute countdown.
So after it blinks 5 minutes and it shuts off?
Yep. So if they don't come and ask for it, so I'm gonna go out and ask for this. Now I've been given the warning, the lights have blinked, because out there on the canopy, they're not gonna know, hey, we just saw the blink, the lights are gonna turn off, we actually need them on. They can come back out there and hit that button. I'm not gonna walk over there, I'm gonna hit this one.
Some of those creek switches, those free links. One back full, one back here, I got a couple, give you a couple, it's in one back.
I've got a few.
Oh, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, Vista, I wanted Vista.
Accidentally double tapped. So now it's starting that 240-minute countdown. In 4 hours, it's gonna blink again. So normal hours, after hours, I'm gonna take a look at that. Those are probably the only thing you need to really know about the panel. Here's the schedule for group 2. So group 1, here's our groups. Group 1 is all 4 relays. Group 2 is 1 building lights and 3 canopy lights. And group 3 is 3 and 4, just canopy lights. So you can see the night lights are here. So what we've got here is we've got our schedule that's pointed to group, which one is this is schedule? Dark light is pointed to group 1, and it's gonna use normal hours after hours. It's the only thing gonna make it go into normal hours after hours. Everything else is either just gonna turn lights on or turn lights off. And then, okay, yeah, both group 1. And then we've got a schedule for group 2, which is gonna turn off 1 and 3, which are just the building lights, not the night lights. And then we've got a group for 3 and 4, so they can control just the 400. It monitors what's in here, and when we auto calibrate it, it blinks the lights, and it figures out how much contribution the electric light has, and then it makes its algorithm as to, now I need to be giving this much for this. So the output, when it's blinking, and it did these particular lights here, it went pretty dark when they went on and off because of where we're at. And so right now they're probably only dimming to like 96% or 90% or something like that. These are the old analog, you just gotta throw those in there. If it doesn't have a window in it, it's not DLM. DLM is with this black window in it. The daylight sensor, it has a clear cover over it, so we can still get in it and program that way. This is the segment manager that you guys have on board. Again, we get 40 rooms. We got 2 opportunities for LAN. LAN 2, the secondary one, is for us. It's gonna live on this network. That is the IP address for your controller. You don't have any routers. Again, it's all out. You've got 2 loops that are going out. And then we've got LAN 1, and we've been given an IP address of 10.7.164.73 for this site. So that's your guys' way in. The segment manager is where we're gonna do all of our recording of wattage. Inside of the room controller, we've got an opportunity to put in the voltage. You guys can actually come through and put square footage in there for a room, and then it'll start trending, and it'll actually tell you who's the aggressive user based on square footage. Until you have square footage in there, all it's telling you is who's using the most. But the square footage helps you, if you've got that room is putting out the same wattage as this one, obviously, or a little more than this one. Basically, the square footage is bigger. It actually could be less aggressive user, right? Based on those 2 things. 1-year warranty on this bad boy. Everything else is about 5 years. But the segment manager only has a 1-year warranty. This is the bridge. This is what allows us to get into the room. It's MSTP, and this is what changes the language from the DLM language, pushes it over the MSTP line back to the segment manager. I went quickly through that, but we're gonna touch on some other stuff. Any questions about, you know, the hardware stuff? All right, we'll move on. The config tool I can do, I can program, I would say probably 90% of the site just using the config tool. Program everything, pull it into the computer, make some tweaks, add some voltages, the partial offs if you need them, and push all that stuff back out. But this is a pretty handy tool to have. The new one, I don't know if you can read that right there, is the LMCT 100-2. And the 2 has a micro USB in the back of it, and it allows us to update it, the firmware inside of it. The old ones don't, right under the battery lid in the back. If you see one, then it's upgradable. IR communication 2 ways through the window on the top. And so the room controller is just a placeholder. It has places for information. When we get into the room, we call and dial up that, call for that information. It populates those placeholders, we make our changes, and then we send it back. Canopy lights that are out here. And those groups are, they're just turning loads on and off. That's all they're doing. They're not pushing it from normal hours to after hours. So that's that. So if somebody says the lights are on during the day, well, now that we have switches, it kind of throws a wrench in it, right? Because somebody can hit a switch. If it's just a canopy light, most likely someone hit it out there. If it's all the lights, most likely somebody hit it in here.
So the switch in the electrical room is the only one that will manually turn on all the lights.
All of them, right?
So if you do guys get that call, then someone went into the electrical room to actually perform that function. That's the only place
Yep.
it can be done from.
And during the day, they should be going off in 4 hours, or you can just say, hey, well, go in there and turn them off. If they want the canopy lights back on, then then they can manipulate that from over there. Let's see, all of these labs here, they have that LMSW 100, and you see it says network 3. Again, it's doing the lab. The network 3 button, all of those 3 have one. Just lab on and off. And then in 07 in the electrical closet, there's one for network 1. Nothing's doing network 2 because that's a schedule off at 11 o'clock. Did you see that? Schedule, group 2 off, 11 p.m. That's all it does.
And group 2 is the night lights?
Evening light.
It's the,
Evening
it's,
lights?
yeah,
I just did that.
okay.
So I can see the screen a little better.
That's okay. Well, my question is, I was told they went district-wide, dusk to dawn, all the campuses.
What we do is I always start with we do have half of the exterior lights on, dusk to dawn.
Yep.
The other half turns off at 11. With these LEDs anymore, and with the, checkerboard patterning, that seems to be plenty of light.
Okay.
So if we need to change it, we can, but once, all our LED buildings, I don't see a big problem. There's plenty of light even with the night lights on,
Okay.
or the evening lights, I should say.
So, those are some, well, I just wanted you to know that those switches are there, and they are network switches. Let's see, let's take a look at, I'm just gonna pop into the GUI here. So you guys are just gonna go to your browser, and type in your IP address. Remember, this was mine. When it first comes up, it's probably gonna be black, and it's gonna say, you know, we don't play well with each other. And you have to hit the advanced tab, and then you have to get into it, then it's gonna bring you to this screen here, probably the first time. And this is where we have Segman and WattStopper1, capital W at TTSTOPPER1. This looks familiar. So these are our two segments right here. Building South, Building P North, and they're already looking at your power usage. If we go to your if we go to your north building and we double click on it, it's gonna bring up all of the rooms. These rooms are reporting usage because they're on. This electrical room is on also, but that particular room controller does not monitor power. So we'll never get on this page a reflection of what's going on in that room. I wanted to look at the schedule. Well, there is no schedule. I must have been at a different site. So I'm gonna make a schedule. Well, actually, the schedule lives in, so you guys have a couple, you know, sometimes it's, you may get it from here, you may not, you may not get it just being right up on it. Turn the lights off, move it, you know, just gotta be a bully about it. On the first page, if you guys wanna skip, I mean, I know you guys have quite a few trainings, but I can keep going or all right. Sensor configuration is on the first page. It's for occupancy sensors. We can pull down that information. Time delay, passive infrared, ultrasonic sensitivities, the initial trigger and re-trigger. We can change all of that using the remote. We're gonna make our changes and then hit send.
Could we, go ahead and take your guys' LMCTs and go ahead and pull one up off one of these dock sensors and there's one over here too, John.
I suppose you have to be.
You're good for about 20 feet if you're head on into it.
Okay. Sensor configuration is what pops up first, which should be fine, right?
Yep, that's the occupancy sensor.
So just hit that center button on it, you should see it blink blue for you.
Yep, blue, one blue anyway. Current settings.
Go ahead and
Yep.
click on that.
Point of desired
Okay,
occupancy.
now point to it. It's infrared, so you wanna, kinda get a decent line on it. 25 feet's fine as long as you got a good line.
Yep.
Back to
No,
the,
go ahead and hit that, current settings. Okay, hold on. I don't wanna stand
well,
over
that's the
it.
center button, right?
Yeah, but you should see this blue blink real fast for you. I think your angle, it's an infrared, so.
How far did you get? Still says no view.
No, time delay 20 minutes is what it says.
Okay, so boom, now you pull down the information of that device is what you're looking at there.
Okay.
So at that point, that's telling you which one it is. The sensitivity is 90%, if for some reason you get a call down, and it goes turning on too much, you change sensitivity down, you know what I'm saying? You're able to scroll through those. So I go ahead and launch.
Nothing?
No.
Triggers on passive infrared.
I see it was going blue.
Yeah, it's, let's see it. This is a FSIR. You'll be trying all day. That's for exterior lights.
Well, I just wanted to check the configuration of that occupancy sensor. obviously it should have some settings already in it. If for some reason you get a call that says, hey, this isn't working, are you able to get yours to pull down?
That one would never go in, that's a FSIR. That's for exterior lighting.
That one?
The one he has, I'll let him use mine.
Oh, I didn't pull the new one out yet, I gave John mine, let me go ahead and pull that one.
There it goes.
Yep. So, for me, if we had a situation in the room, the sensitivities would be the last thing I would change. If we want, it to be more sensitive when we get into space, I would probably change the initial trigger to passive or ultrasonic.
Instead of both?
Exactly. If you're having to get too far into the room, but what it does do though, is that initial trigger is both because it wants to see aggressive movement. It wants to see some, it wants to make sure that it sees something and not just something moving, right? Because of the ultrasonic, the way the passive infrared works with these, on the corner mount, it displays a beam like this that radiates out. On the ones in the ceiling, that's not part of our system, but that I believe is a Watt stopper sensor. It's circular, so you can see how it's segmented. It sends a beam out every one of those segments, and so the farther away you get from it, it gives us this opportunity to have a dead band, right? If one of those lines is pointing at us, then it's not gonna pick you up till you cross it. The ultrasonic is gonna fill in all of that space. You can't yell at it or clap your hands. So here's where we would create a schedule. At our event, it would show up down here at the bottom. Name it whatever we want. We kind of went over this stuff. Let's see. Here's where we monitor things. Back to our south building, that's just that one classroom over there. This is kind of a weird, this is Chrome. If you use Firefox, there's actually 3 tiles here. One is for the exterior, but the exterior doesn't report anything either, so it doesn't do any monitoring. Zoom back out. Demand response, can you turn those lights up to 100? Demand response, let's see if I got it. Just barely. It just pushed them down from, let's go to the room control here. It just pushed them down from 100 down to 65. Is that this room? Yep, actual level right here, it says 65. So demand response is on. Shed mode is overridden and forbidden. What is going on here? Okay, that's one. I got everything in after hours. Everything was off. After hours. Okay. I'm gonna come up to the top and hopefully send everybody to normal hours. 18 out of 18. And so normal hours, well, the lights were counting down, but if we get back into it, they're probably gonna say on at 100, there's no more timeout because I pushed them to normal. I'm gonna push them back to after hours now. This should just be one, right? Tradition, all rooms, that.
Well, it's kind of different because the rooms, normal and after hours, are somewhat flipped from the exterior light.
Yeah, this isn't gonna let me push it that way. So I'm gonna go, cause this is in normal. And I'm gonna send this from the panel. We can actually walk out and look at the panel.
Okay.
I think you can see what a benefit this is, to programming and doing things. We'll go look at the panel real quick, and I think that's probably gonna be good for us.
Yeah, that's the only thing that gets to me when we talk about, you know, everything in here, normal hours are during the day,
Yeah.
right? So after hours for inside the rooms is the way naturally occurs to me and fits in my mind. Where the exterior lighting, we're considering normal hours when those should naturally be on, which is nighttime, which is after hours. for
Correct.
here.
Yep.
So I don't know if you push everything out to normal hours,
Well, that's what I just did.
but these would be in an on state, and those would be in an on state.
Correct. So we're gonna go to the panel,
Yeah.
and I'm just gonna push the panel into after hours.
The LCP for the exterior.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I made that jump here, and I made the same one, and it just pushed everything.
Exactly.
So, and it wouldn't let me at that level. It's actually emitting a sound, using those two speakers, emitting a sound, and it's kind of like Doppler or sonar. It's waiting for that ping and that bounce back to change. Every time that blue light blinks, something is changing. Every time the red light blinks, and 20 minutes starts over after every one of those. So I wouldn't, with these ones, I would mess with probably maybe angling it more
Angling of
toward
the
the
gimbals.
door. Yep. Angling that one instead of that way, you know, down into this area. And then maybe changing the initial trigger. If we know they walk in this way all the time, then maybe we just change this one's initial trigger. If it's put in the room, the occupancy sensor, based off of the directions by WattStopper, these are kind of optimal. They work the best. Yes, you still have to play with them. Yes, every single room's got its own set of environmental conditions, but you guys have been working with the occupancy sensors a long time. You know it's more of an art form than it is a science. You can't set them all the same. Every single room, it could possibly be different. Individual sensor, here we are again, with our settings, make your changes, push send. Load configuration is the second one. Under load configuration, we're gonna find this opportunity here to change the room from auto on to manual on. And when we pull up and we go into load configuration, it's gonna turn load 1 on, and it's gonna turn all other loads off. If we've got 10 loads, they're all off right now. Load 1 is the only one that's on. You can see over there, we've got a red blinking light in the bottom of that one. The occupancy sensors have a red blinking light. The daylight sensor has a red blinking light. Anything that's a part of this IRB has a red blinking light on it. If we had this room, because a lot of times that happens, we've got rooms around us and they don't want the controllers exposed over there, so they'll put the controllers up on this wall. They'll put controllers in this one for that space. If we get into this mode right here, where we're in this P&L mode, P&L load configuration mode, we can look up in the ceiling and find our room controllers because they've got a red blinking light. We can find our bridge, they've got a red blinking light. Everything a part of the IRB has a red blinking light. And then everything that is controlling this IRB or this load has a blue solid light on it. So that switch controls this load. That switch controls this load. That sensor, and this one's hard to see because of the way it's pointed.
I can see the blue though.
That one's blue, and guess what? The daylight sensor is blue also. So we can see who's controlling the daylight sensor without getting into the daylight configuration. It's kind of clunky to get into. This one is usually pretty easy. But we've got this opportunity here to change it from auto on to manual on, or from manual on to auto on. It also tells us what type of load it is, if it's non-dim or 0 to 10. So this says it's 0 to 10 right on it. It says it's 0 to 10. So we know that up in the ceiling, there's a white control box up there. It's got 0 to 10 leads on it. And if we see that maybe something's not dimming, we can go check that out. They just plug in the front. You know, things happen. I'm gonna hit exit. Actually, I'm gonna go to the next load. Again, here we are in load 2. All of the lights are blinking, all the lights are blue except for that daylight sensor, because it's not controlling this load. I'm gonna hit exit. When you hit exit, because it's IR send and receive, sometimes you'll send it, but the system won't get it. The room controller automatically, or the config tool automatically jumps out, but you always gotta make sure that the red light is not blinking anymore. That's gonna be the tell that says you're really out of the system. You gotta be mindful of the situation, because you're working on something, you're looking at something, and someone says, man, these lights are off. And when they're done tapping, come on. There you go. The light is off and you get out of it, now that switch no longer controls this light load. So just be mindful of it when you're in it. That somebody could possibly push a button. Down at the bottom here, it says bind. And that bind down there is for the occupancy sensors. Because we can see this one, it's just a toggle, it doesn't say you're doing anything. But now I've just turned off, I've unbound that occupancy sensor from this load, so now it no longer controls it. That works for every load. Plug loads also. So, there you go. Just keep in mind, if we unbind a plug load, from the occupancy sensor that's auto on, when we get out of programming, that load is going to be off. You'll have to manually turn it back on because there's nothing to tell it to come back on. I kind of already went over all this. That's what I just did. About 3 blinks a second when it's in load configuration. Push to learn. Everybody's blinking. Daylighting. This is the 400. That's what you have. That's not what we were looking at before. And so we can get into daylighting configuration. It's the 3rd one down. Go to our 400. Pick our 400. It goes to this screen here. And if we wanted to change our zone settings, it's already been calibrated. The zone's been set up. If we want to change our zone settings, we would get into zone settings. Let me see if I... And so it would come, this is 500. There is going to be a place, it's going to say day set point. Let me see if I got it. day set point for the 400, and it's gonna be at the value that it picked. When it saw all that happen, the light levels and all that, it picked what it saw. They don't necessarily conform to a foot candle, which is kind of strange. It's just, it's putting a value on there. But we still have this opportunity to raise or lower that day set point. And when we get into the configuration, we say we want to lower this to a value. We get in here, and then let's see if I got the next screen. I know. It tells you to ramp up or down while you're doing this day set point, and you will actually physically lower the lights, physically raise them, and then you'll hit send, and it'll record that. With the 500, you're just going to put your value in at your set point, and then it'll take, once you send it, it'll take a little bit for that value to catch up, and you'll see the lights either lower or raise according to that. With the room controller, we also have this opportunity, if we go down to the next page to global network, we can look at our network settings. It'll tell us what room it is. If we go into network status, it'll actually tell us, report back, how this room looks. What's the health of this room? And you can pull yours out and take a look at it. It's the second page under global networking. It says network status, and this says healthy 18. I told you there was 17 rooms. The segment manager is one of those spaces. So if you go down to more, hit select, and then go to global, and it's gonna say point at an IR. And again, you're gonna have to be a bully, and you're gonna have to, you can get in through the occupancy sensor, the daylight sensor, the switch, any one of those things.
Where exactly did you get it at?
So hit the home button, the house on the top,
Okay,
go up once to more,
okay.
select, and now third one down says global. There's the second one, I forget.
Does that any of that? That's an older.
Network settings, it is an older one. It's actually, in some cases, easier. So the next one down, network status.
Okay.
You get any switch or anything done.
Yep.
Anything that's in this whole deal, you should get it from.
So if you're in a space,
Yeah. Should be able to move over here and just leave it straight on it, you know, it's like your old TV remote.
it's just a momentary press.
Went to any IR. Enable device.
Yeah, I mean, you might have to move it, get it a little lower. Don't move it while you're doing it. So it says no, go to global, point. There it is,
Okay.
network status.
No response for select.
It really is you gotta just get used to how they respond and.
Oh, there you go, so now you go, so you wanna go to network status
Yeah,
or network settings?
status. Status will tell you how everything is.
Oh, I gotta point this out.
Just hold it a little lower than the switch and point up at it. Some of it's a muscle memory thing, and just momentary press
network status. Oh, momentary press?
All of it's momentary.
Oh, okay.
Dude, that's why.
I held that.
I was hoping you too, so I was waiting to do something.
Okay, that's about, the basics of, the LMCT config tool. About 200, oh, look at that. $299 online. If you're not using it, take them batteries out, so they don't leach, right? Segment manager, I gotta change this. The login is Segman, but, the other one, the one you guys got, yeah, I'm gonna change that. They got us this new in 2020. They passed some kind of, hardware law where you can't just have admin as defaults anymore for anything. And so, they changed theirs. We actually had to log in the first time with the serial number, and then we could change it. Yours is WattStopper, not with a 0, WattStopper1, capital W at TTSTOPPER1. That will be on my report. The segment manager gives us this opportunity to create groups and schedules and monitor, monitor our usage. A backnet point, I pulled all the backnet points off of there so we could give to a third party if that's what's needed. But it's a pretty powerful tool. And it also gives us that opportunity to send out that demand response to everybody.
That login, you said you're gonna change it?
I need to change it here. I already have changed it. It's capital W at
The password?
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's Segman,
so it is Segment.
Segman like that with the capital M. And this used to be the old one. And then WattStopper, did what they did, and this is what we did as a local. We just decided, hey, we're doing this because we're behind a little bit, and then they put their own out. So anytime Raxis is involved, we basically follow WattStopper1. But again, this is my own PowerPoint, so I'll add the other one. It also allows us with our LMCS software to do updates and change firmwares on devices. This is the config page for this segment manager. System information. If you're online with WattStopper about your segment manager, they're gonna wanna know this information. They're gonna wanna know your host ID possibly and your GUI version. So that's on that first page under system information. The next one down is date and time. Every time I get on, it's just a habit. I check this date and time, make sure sunrise and sunset are when they should be, making sure that clock doesn't drift. It keeps its own internal, but it does not update itself when you log on with the computer. So it's not atomic, right? It doesn't write itself all the time. Sunrise and sunset, your longitude, latitude. I have in there as 38 and 122. The time difference is but a minute maybe for sunset. We have this opportunity to let people in, to just look and do some stuff. We got supervisor names, user, other admin names, and visitor or guest names. And you can pass out email addresses and passwords and all that kind of stuff. I haven't really got into that because there's no need for me to, but that all can be done. network settings. On this network settings page, if I messed up, this is where we're gonna go, and we're gonna make those changes. I'm gonna step through all this stuff really quick on yours, but I wanted these key features to be looked at. MAC addresses right here, if an integrator needs this information. When we get into our device tree, click over one, get into our device tree, and we open up our devices. Here's the one segment that's there on this one. We talked about our lime green wire. That's represented with these segment numbers. And then under these devices, if this might be what this one looks like over here, right? One segment, one device, or one room. Everything is gonna be underneath here. It's good information for our third-party person. We don't really rely on this to program any of the spaces. We're gonna use the LMCS software. It's more intuitive, and we know that we're gonna get real-time feedback with it, unlike this here. We can look at our conference rooms. This is where we can go and we can add our square footage for this device. And then, like I was talking earlier, it'll start telling you, who's a gross user or not. All this information is gonna be here. It's still reporting all this stuff, like we were looking at. But again, if we wanna make some changes, we're gonna go to LMCS. There's some latency in this way here. Manual on, auto on, groups, we can create our groups in here, make a group. Anytime we create a schedule, this is me going to this dashboard over here, and see the config button means we're on this page, dashboard means we're on this page. Anytime we're gonna create a schedule, create a new schedule, click on schedule, there's a couple of different ways to get in there. We're always gonna point that schedule toward a group. Interior lights, we're gonna tell it what days it goes. Let's see how far along we've got here. We're gonna pick a time, give it a label, effective date. We could go into the future, or we could go behind, pick our days. If we want it to stop, if we just want it to be for the weekend, that type of thing, we can add an action. Once we add our action, we're gonna pick a time or an occupancy sensor or a photocell. 99% of the time it's gonna be a time. So we select time, a fixed time or an astro time. And then once we've created that time, we're gonna pick a group. We're gonna give it an operating mode. Usually we're gonna give an operating mode. If it's astronomical, we might give it a level, but we're gonna give it this operating mode. And then we're gonna pick normal hours, and we're gonna tell the room, this is what I want you to do when we go to normal hours. This is how I want you to function in normal hours. And then when all this is all been filled in, then this gets grayed out. See, this is grayed out here. Not until we finish does it allow us to save the change. If you're gonna go through and edit the event either here or here, you may have to touch a few of those things to get this to come up so you can save it. So just making a change to one thing. See, this has no time. It did not record the time for that. So when you go to edit it, you may have to touch some other stuff. You may have to come back in and open this up, pick it, and then this will come up. Lights don't turn on, adjust the sensitivities, close the door. If they're not coming on, it's possible that when the teacher left, they're being a good steward and they turn the lights off for daylighting. So it's a single push. Or did I may have unbound it. I'll make sure I fix that. if they turn the lights off and something is holding the occupancy sensor from timing out, then they're not gonna come back on. The occupancy sensor only does two things. It says I'm occupied and I'm unoccupied. I've got these parameters that I'm working with, but my only two signals are occupied and unoccupied. And until both of these occupancy sensors say unoccupied, the auto on won't happen. If it's not turning off, again, check that. We can turn the lights off. We can watch the occupancy sensor blinking red and blue. Those are gonna be the tells that says something's making this happen. A cold column of air, we're plenty of feet away from this, but a cold column of air, if it was closer, air can trigger sound, stop sound, so that sonar, that frequency and that ping can be intermittent based on a cold column of air. Title 24 says 4 feet. The directions for the occupancy sensor says 6. So we can look at all those different things. And again, re-trigger, we can do that kind of thing. Look at that stuff. Again, I think it's more of an art form than it is science. Here we go. 4 to 6 feet. Walkthrough mode. Walkthrough mode is usually in after hours. We don't have a schedule here for any of your rooms, but walkthrough mode is if it comes in and it detects you and it turns the lights on. In 30 seconds, if it doesn't see you again, in 3 minutes, it's gonna turn off. Test mode's good, but test mode really is only going to tell you if the occupancy sensor is working and what loads it's bound to. Because the test is so small, the occupancy sensors here are set for 20 minutes. So a snapshot of 5 seconds doesn't allow the environmental conditions, whatever it is, to trigger the occupancy sensor. So as unfortunate as it is, all it's gonna do is give us that small snapshot for a test mode. Sensor configuration, test mode, individual sensor, point to desired occupancy sensor. It comes back with some settings because we can test the different settings. But once it goes to this page here where it gives up the values of 90 and 70, we're in test mode. So if we're still, and all of this times out, so when we're in test mode, there's a grace period here of a few seconds. So if it's manual on, right now, if I move, they shouldn't come on. If it's auto on, 1, 2 triggers, and the lights come back on. But again, that snapshot is only for that short period of time. A full test is gonna need the whole 20 minutes. Room names, we can change those from the GUI. Often construction documents are different. Fortunately, all these labels were on the room and they were right. We can add the square footage, dashboard, backnet. I've pulled all the backnet points if somebody needs them. These are the only points that are available. Occupancy, switch lock, plug load, room controller power, relay state, and I've picked a few that are most normal hours, after hours, that type of thing to pull off, and this is where I did it. We can do this here. We can change it. We can go get more if we want. Normal hours, after hours, occupancy, lighting and plug lots, load watts and power density. I did groups, normal hours and after hours, and then down here there's a loads and panel loads. Backnet routing isn't necessary. We don't have anything on here. Your site's not that big, but what this does is you guys are gonna be on this network. I'm gonna be on this network. These are the two IP addresses, networks. And with both of these enabled, with this routing on, what it does is it allows all of this traffic to pour through one port. So from here, I'm gonna see all of this. From here, I'm gonna see all of this. And from here, I'm gonna be able to see and send stuff to these different segments. And that's not necessarily necessary. And what it can do is just slow the device down. So when I leave, I'll uncheck this. But this particular check mark right here is gonna allow us to use LMCS. If you're using LMCS on your side and you're going through here, this is your UDP port number. On my side, back one, this is the UDP port number that I use. And I'll show you where that is. And at this point, it blinked up, but it's gonna fall back down because we are in demand response. It should pop back down. It'll go back down. They're changing some of the firmware for the switches to report differently because it's wireless. So they all kind of, when a command is given, they come up and then they rest where the room is. You guys are familiar with this. Relays on and off. Transformer, 24 volts, powering the LMPI. We can, if we lose power to the panel, if our transformer goes down, we can always come back in here, and with the push of this switch, there is a mechanical switch on here. We can turn lights on and off if we need to get them on and off.
We've got little micro switches there.
Yep, the micro switches are here. We can turn things on and off from here. We do have the room, the switch that's right over there. It's not gonna have any fade buttons on it. It's just a switch on and off. It is a network switch, so you just gotta be patient with it. It's gotta go through, it's not like it's just, this switch is reporting to the room controller that's in the box. Lights come on. That has to go through the bridge, down through here, back up. So it takes a little bit for those. And this is our MSTP. This is going out to all the bridges. This is the LMIO 301, which is going to our photocell. It's on the roof. Group buttons. If we wanted to add more groups, we've got one that's doing everything. We can press and hold that button because we know group 1 is following that astro clock, and it's also following the photocell. So if we wanted to add 2 more loads to this, all we have to do is push that and momentarily press this, and now it's going to operate all of them. So keep in mind, if we're adding stuff and we want it to follow a particular schedule, then all we have to do is add it to that group, because that group is already following that schedule. Group 2 is the night lights, right? They're turning off. There's a schedule pointed to it. If we didn't want them to turn off, is kind of what I was hearing maybe would be the case, then we just come in here and we'll hold this button and we'll pull those 2 loads off of it. That's all that has to be done. And then when this group exercises, it'll no longer turn those on and off. Group 3, again, is for just the canopy lights. So 3 and 4 are going on and off. Config button, you can do a bunch of stuff with it. You can program with it. I always tell everybody, read the print, read the fine print, because you can wipe out all the programming by holding it too long. use the config tool for sure. Whoa. That looks like it was dropped. Whoa. Super cap doesn't need to be changed. Future use. Future use. This is for updating firmware. Here's the IR send and receive that's right here. So when we're talking to it, that's what we're talking.
And that's gonna be this other one?
No, this is for a light pole or wall packs.
So the same one will work.
Yeah.
This same one works here.
Okay.
So we're going to turn this on, and I'm going to push this into after hours because it's after hours for that. So I'm going to go down to more. I'm going to go to utilities, and I'm going to go to room mode, and I'm going to go to after hours. And I'm just going to push this into after hours. It doesn't tell you that it's done anything, but it just flashed our lights, so we know we're in after hours. So it's going to go through and do its thing. So in 5 minutes, those lights will be out. We know this is in after hours, where we want it to be. Okay?
So really linking relays to zones is, if we do need to change that, it's almost easier to do it here
Oh,
than that
absolutely. Absolutely.
than anything else.
Yep. Off at 11, on and off with Astro and Photocell. Astro Photocell off at 11, and then this is for our group for our switches. This one also, group 1, also is going to that switch also. Okay. If we wanted to make a change, we're going to make it here for the schedule, and so we can go down to panel setup. Actually, we're going to go to group setup with this particular switch here. It says warning. You're going to make lots of changes. So here's our dark light. So dark light is it's for the it's for exterior lighting. When we go into that, we get some information. Event 1. If we go to event 1, we go to next. Here's our Astro. Dark is normal. Light is after. This is exactly everything we were looking at in the inside, right? And if we back out once, and we go to 2. So this is event 2, and we go down to next. Now this is where the LMIO is. When it's dark, last known value. When it's light, turn off 20-foot candles. And we can make those changes right here. If it's not dark enough, then we're just going to bump those foot candles down. If it's too dark, then we bump them up. 20 works, I find, pretty well. Make our changes. Hit done, and then hit send. All right. The segment manager we were looking at. This is a cradle point. This is for your Raxus, because we do have Raxus service where you can call them and they can make changes to this for the first year. After that, it's a maintenance contract, but you already have the hardware, so it's just paying for the contract. This is an opto isolator. It's mostly for lightning strikes, but this goes from this building to the next building in conduit, and basically it's kind of a buffer for everything, right? It's going to take the hit before it gets back into the segment manager. And this is mine. All right. Can I help you with anything else? The ROC, again, you've got 60 days from today to call the ROC. They will be getting a copy of all my information. That's the remote operations center for Raxus. And they're going to have all of my files, everything I've copied. The number is right here, 888-740-7950. And you're going to say, hey, Matt or Mark, what is it? Mark. I'm I'm the contact person. We're starting this, and if I've got any questions or need to change anything, they can do it. All right.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
I know it's a lot, but there it is.